You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Welcome back to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today and we have a special guest. We have Dr. Dan Gerstein. He is someone that you need to know. He is a leading voice in national security and a strategist who has navigated the complexities of defense from almost every possible angle. Whether it's in the field, the classroom, or the halls of government, Dr. Gerstein has been at the forefront of shaping how we understand and respond to modern threats. Man, he has a resume that probably take me 30 days and 30 nights to go through. So let me just cut to the chase. During his service in the United States Army, he served on 4 continents while participating in combat peacekeeping, humanitarian assistance, and homeland security, and served for more than a decade in the Pentagon and various high-level staff assignments. The reason why he is here today is because he has an amazing book coming out. It's coming out very soon, May 15th, but you can pre-order it right now on Amazon. The title of that book, I have it right here, right now, on the screen, War Without Humanity. It is something that you really want to know about because there's a lot of tech and science in this book. And also, you're going to learn about what he is going to be bringing to the table. Because if you like nonfiction and fiction books, guess what? He has experience of doing both. First and foremost, I want to say to our guests, thank you for being patient with that intro. That's probably the longest intro I gave this week. I didn't give to 5% of what you do. So thank you for being patient. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to having a good conversation.
Yes, sir. So if people want to know more of what you do, they just have to Google you because, like I said, I'll probably take a 30-minute show just to go in detail on all the great things that you do. So first, I want to say thank you for your service to our country. And let's start out with the book. What inspired you to get into AI topic is something that everyone's talking about, but specifically thinking about soldiers in the future. This story takes place in your book in 2039, and it's all about there could be some problems, and I won't spill the beans, but there's a lot of things in this book that's going to keep people on the edge of their seat.
I mean, that's a great place to start. What caused me to want to write the book? So I have worked in a number of think tanks. I've written a lot of studies and papers, pretty hard science stuff, nonfiction. I've written 8 nonfiction books as well. Everything from technology to how it is to work in the Pentagon, which is kind of a self-help book called Assignment Pentagon. And, I enjoy writing those books, but, what I wanted to do was have something that would be very accessible to sort of the average person who wants to understand more about artificial intelligence, but also wants to perhaps understand about what it could mean in security and defense and war. And so what I've done is to put together a fiction book here, and it has a narrative, and that narrative takes us from the development of this new type of force where humans and augmented humans with brain-computer interfaces and pharmacological enhancements and AI-enabled robots are all on the same battlefield. And so, as you pointed out, the big battle takes place in 2039. And, not to give away too much, but at the end of that, the question I ask is, has this non-biological intelligence, this humanoid robot, started World War III?
You have also PhD in biodefense from George Mason University. And that, come on. When you have a heavy hitter like yourself on the show, I'm going to be sweating a little bit as a host because you have so much detail and rich experience. How did some of your your professional experiences help shape how you want this nonfiction to roll out for you?
Yeah, that's a really good point to make because, for example, one of the scenarios that I walk through as part of the novel is once you've built this force, you have to start putting it into a mission environment. So, years ago, in 1994, we put a U.S. force in Haiti on a peacekeeping operation. And so I've kind of replicated what happened in Haiti in 1994, but in my book, it's actually in 2037, and it involves humanoid robots. And these humanoid robots actually act outside of the mandatory guidance that they've been given. And again, certain things happen, and you ask the question then, well, who is responsible? Is it the humanoid robot who we're going to hold accountable, or is it the first human in the chain of command, in this case, a lieutenant, a platoon leader who may have a year or two in the Army? Or is it going to be the designer or the coder of the AI programs? Is it going to be the manufacturer of the humanoid robots? And, answer is we really don't know who we would hold responsible. That's part of the interesting issue that has to be discussed with respect to artificial intelligence and humanoid robots and putting these kinds of systems on the battlefield.
When you look at chapter 3, surprises occur at the most unlikely times. You keep having these twists and turns, and that's like the signature of great books. Have you thoughts of real time, or not real time, but real life situations to help kind of navigate you with these designing of twists and turns in the book?
Well, no, but what I've tried to do is take where I have been in the military and translate those operational experiences and conceptual experiences into a narrative. And, the chapter you're alluding to is kind of interesting because we have always been a bit reluctant about taking healthy humans and doing something like a brain-computer interface. But, if somebody has, for example, ALS or Parkinson's disease, we have on occasion given them things like brain-computer interfaces to enhance their capacity. And in this particular case that you're alluding to, a very senior officer is given a brain-computer interface to monitor his brain activity after some sort of anomaly that the doctors are trying to understand. And again, things go wrong to the point where this individual dies as a result of brain-computer interface overload. Too much information being downloaded, if you will, and causing cerebral hemorrhage, a stroke.
With AI being the hottest topic right now, and what you use AI in the book in describing these soldiers, when you think about the U.S. Army development process involving with the incorporate of these technologies, what do you envision with U.S. Army's development in that process?
Well, one of the lessons that I came to, and again, this is, for me, it's even breaking new ground because we don't have humanoid robots on a battlefield, which is very uncertain, and it has to be reactions in real time that occur. So one of the things that I came to was, you have the humans, and then you could have augmented humans, and you could have the AI enabled robots. The question is that human in the middle of that piece of the battlefield, is that actually a useful thing to have a human with a brain-computer interface? Because at some point, if you issue the guidance, the humanoid robots could execute and may not need to have a human with a brain-computer interface in the center of the formation. And so, that begs another question. How would that human then command and control those humanoid robots? And so there's a lot of time in the book spent about, what happens? How do you train this formation? How do you get them to understand how to march, how to go on patrols, how to engage an enemy? These are all really interesting questions. For us, we can kind of envision that, but then, what does it mean for a non-human entity, one of these humanoid robots? And that's really what we're trying to have a discussion about in the book.
When the book portrays a network world of where humans are mere nodes in a vast of digital web drawing from chapter 5. You built it, now what? I mean, we know challenges are always going to come with technology. I mean, we barely can survive with our cell phones being drained, with the battery being drained, or the signal going bad when we're using the GPS to navigate the roads in today's world. What challenges do you highlight in your book deploying these such force? Because the platoon leaders, their brain-computer interface has to play a role in that as well.
Well, I mean, I think that's right. And you have to figure out how much autonomy do you give these robots? Can you give them mission orders, and can they execute them? Again, not to give too much away about the ending, but, what we have at the very end is a situation where there's a company that's out on the border between Russia and Latvia. And there's a squad of these humanoid robots, and they begin to do things that go against the order. So, for example, the general had said, no, we're not going to conduct any cyber attacks. But yet, for some reason, which is very hard to trace in these AI systems, they begin to act outside of that, and they conducted a cyber attack against the Russian unit. Now, what's interesting about this is, in this case, it actually worked to the advantage of the U.S. squad, because what it did was it made the Russians believe that there were 4 divisions out in their front, because they were simulating a much larger formation. And in fact, they only had 11 humanoid robots simulating 4 divisions worth. And that's kind of an interesting thought. There might be missions where you could use these to great advantage, and then others where you would not want to use them at all, because if they're acting outside of mission or guidance, then perhaps that's not what you want to use them for.
Once again, listen on Refocused Radio, talking to our special guest today, Dr. Dan Gerstein. And we're talking about his book that's going to be dropping May 15th, but is available right now on Amazon to pre-order. And the title of that book is War Without Humanity, Conflict in the Post-Human Era. Our next question for you, sir, is when you think about the point that enhanced humans began to see themselves as a new species, the book questions loyalty, identity, and control. In chapter 9, Seeing the Elephant. What are some of the ethical concerns that you try to highlight in the book as well?
Well, I discussed those earlier in an overview, but I'll go into a little more detail. I mean, when you have these systems and you're giving them missions to do, and they begin to go outside of what they were directed to do, you get into these questions about who is responsible. And, we've already gotten to the point with like companies, for example, where companies actually have First and Fourth Amendment rights. Industries actually are afforded First Amendment and Fourth Amendment rights. And so what kind of rights would we give to these non-biological robots? Would we give them personhood, digital personhood? And what would that mean about accountability and responsibility? So there are many of these ethical and societal questions that come up when we start to deploy these. There's already a body of thought. There are a group of professors that are talking about should we be, paying these robots, or if you don't pay them, do they just become indentured servants, for example? So there's this whole question about how do you treat these humanoid robots, and not necessarily in the book, but more broadly in society. How do we think about these types of systems?
When you see responses from General Wesley K. Clark praising the book for challenging the notion of substituting robots for soldiers, what do you think should happen or could happen with policymakers and what they might have to heed to in the future?
Well, I think this is really, it gets to the crux of it. What happens if there is something that goes wrong and it is a catastrophic outcome? So, one of the areas that I spend some time on is, are there missions that we should absolutely not allow humanoid robots or non-biological intelligences to function? And I think one of them that we can all sort of understand and agree to is, we probably shouldn't have the control of nuclear weapons being done by these AI-enabled humanoid robots. It's probably dangerous to do, and therefore we should not allow that to occur. And so these are constraints that we could see putting on ourselves. And I apologize for my cat. He hears the discussion and he wants to be part of it, but. In any case, I think that's a good example of one where we wouldn't want to have the final decision given to one of these non-human systems.
I think your cat might be in the next book, maybe, because quite honestly, you probably have a good series on your plate that you can execute. Is that something that you're thinking about doing, creating a potential series?
Well, it's funny you should ask because, yes, I have started I've taken one of the characters from the book who is in this book, he is an expert in brain-computer interfaces. But what I've done in this follow-on is that he would be doing countering biological warfare. And I won't tell you the country, and I won't talk much about the scenario. But what happens is that he comes upon the potential for a plot against Western. I'll just say Western entities so you can guess there would be biological warfare attacks, and how would they be stopped? And that's kind of I'm about halfway through the manuscript right now.
Given your roles on corporate boards and advisory committees, what advice would you give to defense leaders and people who have the position of influence to lead missions and ideas for the future that is going to be impacted with technology, including advances of AI?
Well, it's not just AI, but again, you've hit on a wonderful point, and that is with technology, we find ourselves always kind of in the catch-up role. We have technologies that are deployed as soon as there's functionality that might be useful, but then it normally takes a handful of years until we begin to say, we understand what the use case is, how the technology could be used, but we don't necessarily understand how it might be misused. And so what I like to see is these corporations would do well to think about not just the use cases, but also the misuse cases simultaneously, and put in some guardrails and safeguards. With artificial intelligence, a lot of the rhetoric right now is all about moving faster. But, for example, in the nonfiction work that I was writing about on artificial intelligence, when the ChatGPT-4 first came out, there was something really interesting about it. Because what wound up happening was that ChatGPT-4 comes out and it's making a lot of mistakes, and its developer then understands they have to very quickly bring back the software and update the software and re-release it. And, that has gone on now in kind of a cycle that keeps repeating itself. We keep finding mistakes that the software is making. It's very dangerous, for example, to think that, our artificial intelligence is actually hallucinating and in some cases being deliberately deceptive in answering the questions that are posed to it. And that's something that we really have to make sure that we don't allow to go forward. I'll just give you one anecdote. This comes from where I used to work. I had done a series of papers for Department of Homeland Security. And what this think tank did was it took two of my papers, and ran it through an AI generator, and it asked the AI generator for each paper to come up with 20 statements about the paper. And then they asked me to look at those 20 statements and say which of those did the AI get right and which did it get wrong. And lo and behold, in both cases, what we saw was that the AI was only about 70% accurate. Now, that might be fine for, if you're just, it's not a crucial issue, you're just searching for information and you're going to do follow-up research. But if you're talking about something like, for example, how many milliliters of a drug do you prescribe? That's not going to be good enough. And so we really have to be careful about what the results are that come out of the artificial intelligence. And we can't believe everything we see. There has to be some sort of validation that occurs.
And to your point, in the civilian world, people are using ChatGPT for everything, almost thinking. But that's just a bad joke. But when you think from looking through the lens of leadership in military, how crucial is it to have that human touch, to have instincts that are limited with what AI is reading as data?
Well, again, this goes back to this question about nuclear command and control. We have actual historical events that have occurred where during the height of the Cold War, there was an exercise. In fact, I served on it as a lieutenant. I was deployed out in the field. It was called Able Archer, and Able Archer was practicing NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization's NC3, Nuclear Command Control Communications. And what happened was the Russians saw, or the Soviets at the time, saw what we were doing, and they actually concluded that we were in the middle of a deliberate attack, a surprise attack, using our nuclear weapons. And it took one of it was a Soviet colonel actually, who saw this and he said, this is not the way that NATO and the United States would react. And they sort of paused for a bit, and then they took another look at it and they realized, that's right. That's not the way they would do it. So it was one colonel doing an intervention. And had that not happened, we could have had a nuclear exchange, and it could have been absolutely catastrophic. And so this is the kind of reason why you really want to have a good deal of confidence in what's coming out before you act on it.
Again, if you're watching us online, you can get a copy of this book. It is coming out May 15th, but you can pre-order right now on Amazon. War Without Humanity. My last question for you before we wrap up the show for today is, what's one takeaway that you hope that readers will gain, understanding that this book is helping us understand something a little bit deeper, the role of humanity's role in the future of conflicts, and how writing this novel, how it influenced you and your views and how technology is progressing in defense?
Well, I mean, the first thing I hope it will be entertaining for readers, because I do think there are a lot of interesting anecdotes. And I also hope that it will cause people to think about technology policy more broadly. We are in an incredible age where technology is moving so rapidly, and it's not just artificial intelligence, but it's the wide range of technologies that are in use. We talked already about biotechnology. I mean, we're actually reprogramming and programming life. We have the ability to manipulate DNA and RNA to great effect. And the question is, will we do it responsibly? And so, as we think about these technologies and the future, I would like to see us be able to roll out technologies in ways that are helpful to humankind and not hurtful to humankind. And that's, I think, a big message here is not to cause and stifle innovation and cause us to slow down necessarily, but just cause us to consider how technologies could at some point be misused, because inherently all these technologies become dual use. It could be used for either legitimate purposes or for nefarious purposes. And so, those are the two big takeaways I hope that the reader would get out of this. First, enjoyment, and then maybe think about the future of technology.
Once again, that's on Refocused Radio and watching us online. Talking to our guest today, Dr. Dan Gerstein. Make sure you get a copy of his book. It's going to be available May 15th, but available right now if you want to pre-order on Amazon. Once again, I want to say to you, thank you for talking about your project, War Without Humanity, Conflict in the Post-Human Era. Like always, thank you for your time.
And thank you.